for you young boys out
Just
there.
imagine.
For you.
He's all
Dark side, light this bitch up.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Bros Think Big podcast. This is the show where we talk about the simple and yet complicated ideas of self-improvement. We have Fricker joining us once again. Honestly, I don't even think we got to give him an intro. This is like the third time you're on here, so just
They said they needed me.
consider him a member at this point.
He is a member. What do you mean consider?
Yeah, he is a member.
He is a member.
I'm a member.
I made it.
I made
Tell your
it.
mama you made it, Fricker.
Okay.
Today we're talking about addiction. All right, we're going to go over what are the common addictions, why you are addicted, and how to reprogram the brain. And so to go over it, I'm going to start off by saying, I'm sure most of you know what addiction even is, but to those of you that don't, I want to give you guys the textbook definition, and it's when you're physically and mentally dependent on a particular substance and unable to stop taking it without incurring adverse effects. So there's a bunch of things that can tie into this, and up there on the board we have a bunch of...
Well, I just want to start before you even read off the board. Most people, when they think of addiction, only think of drugs and alcohol. But we're going to go over a lot more topics, which Sasha can now list. So don't just think, oh, we're talking about drugs and alcohol. There's so much more than just that.
Even the simple things are.
Yeah, I mean, around our age, we see so many kids addicted to porn, video games, junk, sugary foods. Lust. Lust is a big one. Social media, huge one. I mean, seeking comfort, too. Pleasure, everyone's obsessed with that feeling. And that's just what I see throughout our generation, mostly. I feel free to let us know what else you guys can notice down in the comments, but as far as like the main points go, those are all the detrimental ones. There's not a single good thing about being addicted to any of those.
Yeah, and so with all those things that you just listed, it's the most broadened thing that I could say about it is just it's pleasure. It's just straight pleasure. All those things give you instant gratification, if you want to call it. It's just pleasure in general. And one thing that I did learn is that with a lot of pleasure comes a lack of meaning, which means like, you guys know what that means. Like, you don't know what to do with your life. You don't know why you're here, stuff like that. Like, because you have everything at your fingertips. You have literally everything. You can do anything you want. There's unlimited resources. Therefore, you can do all these things. But then if you do have all these things, then what is the point of life?
You're the most true when you're discomfort. Yeah. So when you're facing adversity is when you really understand who you are. So you can't really claim that you have any meaning or that you know what your meaning is if constantly all you're getting is this satisfactory feeling of whatever it is. And I'll tell you what, every single kid, I would beg to differ, that every single kid has gone through a porn addiction at some point in their life.
Yeah.
A lust addiction.
Young men especially.
Lust addiction. A social media addiction. Most still to this day. Video games suffer. A lot of people still suffer. And I think the most controversial one is the junk food. It's very, very, very rare, in my opinion, to find anyone that can really resist junk food that often.
And so one thing I want to say is like I want to dive into one of these main common addictions. Is like my number one thing was, I guess, video games in that sense, right? I during my middle school years and even to 9th grade, 10th grade, I was always playing video games after school. That's all I would do. And at some point it was at my fingertips. I could do it whenever I wanted. So it got to a point where like I was just doing it and I wasn't really feeling anything from it. I wasn't doing it to have fun. I was just doing it because like at that point it's like I kind of have to do it.
You were like programmed to do it.
I was programmed to do it. And
come back home, put the back down.
For example, at that time it was like I was playing Fortnite. Fortnite's an addictive game. Like, let's be honest. And I would just play games like that like all the time. And especially during quarantine, we didn't really have a lot. We couldn't really go outside, so definitely video games and technology was a way for people to actually dive deep into those types of things.
Can I ask you a question?
What?
Did you find any meaning?
No, I did not. Actually, I did not. I want to try to think I did, but I did not. So
I'm sure you learned something, but nothing.
I did learn
truly
something,
about yourself.
but during the quarantine, as I was explaining, like I'd wake up and just play video games because that's the only thing I could do. It's the only thing that gave me joy. I was thinking it was giving me joy, but at the end of the day, I was really just so bored from all the stimulation of the video games that I didn't even know what to do with myself anymore. I go into the next addiction. A lot of young men nowadays are addicted to porn. It's so bad. If you give a kid a phone at the young age, the young ripe age of like what, 13, 14, they have access to porn and just women, and just not even just women, it's the other way around.
You won't believe it, even younger, dude.
Even younger, and it's so bad for their brain because their brain is still developing. They can develop addiction to that, and that comes into dopamine. Yeah.
No, it's bad. But I just want to share quickly, with especially the porn one. And a lot of these addictions is the same thing where it's other people, right? You wouldn't have a porn addiction if no one else told you about porn. But a lot of it is your friends, right? These 10-year-olds, one person discovers it through someone else, and then they tell another person, they see it, and then bam, bam, bam. It's a whole connection. And what I'm trying to say is how important peer pressure plays when it comes to getting addicted. Not necessarily getting addicted, but the starting of it. Especially drugs and alcohol. You go to a party, you have no appetite for this. That's not the way you live. But then you have a good friend that's like, yo, you want to sniff some coke with me? It's really hard to say no.
That's
it's
wild.
very difficult. It's very difficult when you're in that situation, when especially a good friend of yours to just say no. And that's kind of the power of no. We're not really going to get into it, but I just wanted to share that little thing of just how vital, I don't know how to describe it, but peer pressure. Just
No, you're definitely right.
Yeah.
That's literally how it is.
Peer pressure, your friends, what they're doing, you will do too eventually.
And don't you think you got your video games from some other friends saying,
From
yo,
my cousins that were like pretty much my friends back in the day.
Exactly.
They were doing it, so therefore I was doing it.
Yeah, that's literally how it starts.
It's funny too because drug addictions literally stem from peer pressure in most cases. I mean, the only other two suitable ones I would find is like early exposure and like physical abuse or sexual, mental, whatever it is, abuse. My point is like this peer pressuring thing that you guys are on about is also something else that's detrimental. And back on what Fricker was saying about how kids having their phones already, like there's a reason 21 is the legal drinking age. It's because that's when your brain is mostly like developed from the young age. I mean, especially because of the fact that
It's literally killing your brain cells, and when you're young and you're drinking and stuff, you're literally taking all the substances, the chemicals in your body that can't kind of like digest it, and it really like fucks you up, you know?
Yeah, I had a brain fart. Like, that's why young kids shouldn't be having these phones. Like, I went over this in the last episode, but our 9-year-old brother has a telephone. For what? You're so like the social media is gonna.
And what is he doing there?
Go out, live a
What
life,
does he
right?
do on there?
You know what he does on there. Like,
Well, no, just be
Roblox?
Roblox is
Minecraft.
crazy. That's crazy.
What is it?
YouTube,
do?
TikTok,
Matrix, dude.
Instagram. I've
Matrix.
seen the gameplay. It's Matrix.
It is Matrix. So okay, let's first talk about like how to even spot an addiction. How can we help these guys spot an addiction right off the bat? One thing I wanted to talk about is the caffeine. We didn't put it on there, but caffeine is a huge addiction for people. Oh, I want my morning coffee.
Caffeine's a drug.
People walk into work and be like, oh, don't talk to me until I have my morning coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, like, that just means, like, you can't act a certain way because you don't have a certain thing. Therefore, you're dependent on it. Therefore, it is an addiction.
That's true.
We all have experienced this. I mean, teachers, if they didn't have a coffee in the morning, they would get so pissed at you
Bunch
for
of
no
bitches.
reason. Exactly. I would walk in class if the teacher didn't have his or her coffee. They would just be off emotion. We would ask him, or like they would even be like, "Oh, I didn't have coffee this morning. Just don't talk to me." Dude, it's a big thing with teachers. I wake up 5 in the morning. I need my
big of a
coffee.
deal, but like think
That
about
is addiction.
that, bro. Think about that. They will not function the way they actually function unless they have a drink. Like, have you really like looked into it? Like, now that you just said
It's
that,
a damn
like,
coffee.
Yeah, they just said, I
It
won't
go- it
be the
goes
way
deep,
I
though. It's not
actually
just the
am
coffee.
because I don't have a coffee. Like, what?
Okay,
I was
wait.
like, what?
But like, let's like
God,
dive
man.
deep on like why they even like the coffee. So let's think about it. Like, the caffeine is a drug. So let's tie this into the drugs addiction. So caffeine stimulates your brain. It lifts your mood. It's scientifically searched and researched to that. I am dealing with a caffeine addiction, and I am trying to deal with that now. And honestly, it's really hard because it is a drug, but it's the first thing to do when you are trying to like figure out if you're addicted to something or not, is to figure out.
If you can function the same way without it.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was trying to go.
Yeah. I mean, I told you this today, and I've said this before. Even with pre-workout, a lot of people use pre-workout when they work out, and it kind of gives them like this stimulant of, being there at the moment even more and lifting more weights, being more energized and stuff. But all that energy really comes within you, and you have that energy. You just have to be able to discover it and be strong with your mind and physical body, that you're able to do this without the extra substance that your body takes. You know what I mean? It's like we're like a battery that is charged, and we're able to function in a day the right way. And you don't really need any kind of substance to do that. You can
Natural
literally
energy,
start that with-
sleeping.
exactly.
That's all you need.
Natural energy. And you can refill this energy within yourself.
Yeah. So let's also dive in on like why we are addicted in the first place, what causes an addiction, etc. Josh?
Yeah, so I'm not, again, none of us here are really scientific based, but if I were to give really like a scientific answer on why we get addicted, I mean, it's pretty simple. Me and Mike, he's going to show you a visual representation, but I'm gonna explain it in words. It's basically as individuals continue to, have addictive habits or substances, and as time goes on, the brain adapts, right? And it tries to reestablish a balance between the dopamine surges and the normal levels of the substance in the brain. And basically, what this causes is the dopamine receptors, or just dopamine, the brain produces less of, because it's already getting so much excess from you just having this addiction. So the brain kind of realizes it, and it's like, okay, I don't need to produce as much dopamine. And because of doing so, guess what? Now your brain has less dopamine, and in order to get it back to where you were originally, it needs to exert more dopamine. And what this leads to is just your brain wanting more and more. And that's how basically tolerance comes into play, is like same with drugs, is
Like a caffeine tolerance.
exactly, rather than having a cup of coffee do the job, you need two, because now your dopamine basically got reduced by half of how much your brain naturally produced. And realistically, like without dopamine, like why so many people get like anxiety and stress because of these addictions is because dopamine is your pleasure. Like this is what comes out when you enjoy pleasure. So when your body produces less of the dopamine and you stop doing the addiction, guess what? Your body's running low off dopamine, and it could cause depression and anxiety and all those stuff. That's really the science of it. And another thing I just want to say is, because dopamine plays a key role, right, in learning and memory, it hardwires the need for the addictive substance or experience into the brain. Like, it's not just a chemical release in your brain, it's hardwired into your brain. And as the addiction gets worse and worse, you really understand like how much it can affect your brain. And none of us here know how powerful our brain is. None of us. I really do believe that we humans in general, even the smartest people in the world, don't even know what 50% of the brain is capable of. So it really is the science. Like what I'm telling you right now, realistically could change in 5 years, but as of right now, that's what we know of.
Yeah, so that's the science-based stuff.
Yeah.
I will now go into explain, like, roughly, like, what he said, but in, like, a physical form, like, on the board. And I'll go right to that. Right, so I'm going to explain dopamine in the most basic way that anyone can understand it, right? So right here, this big line right here, we have the dopamine baseline. So this is, I guess, like, what you wake up with it. Your dopamine level that you wake up with, whatever. It's different for everyone. So I'm gonna first give an example of an instant gratification habit or an addiction or a bad habit that you do that you think gives you the instant like pleasure. So, for example, I'm gonna do
Social media.
Social media, right? You wake up, you go on social media for an hour, right? Your dopamine levels rise, right? But after you're done doing that, it goes down. This is now your baseline dopamine level, and what that means pretty much is this is what your like your happiness is at. This is like your peak This is the peak happiness you can be at. But if you combine that with a disciplined habit, right? I'm not saying it's a good thing or bad thing, but no, this is a good thing.
This is a good thing.
This is a good
Definitely,
thing.
yeah. Goes up.
The disciplined habit, right? It might suck at first, like blah blah. You don't want to do it. You don't want to do it. You don't want to do it. But after you're done it, your dopamine levels go up. So what that means is your dopamine baseline is up higher. Therefore, you can be more happy than you were after or before the disciplined habit. So this is really just trying to understand. If you keep doing the same habit over and over again, this is going to go lower, lower, lower. This is the maximum amount of happiness that you can get in a day. And this is why people are so slow and lethargic and have no meaning in life.
And this one can go up.
This one can go up even higher. Imagine the possibilities. There's no fucking limit with this shit. Boom, boom. It's basic math. I'm going to cut to the podcast now. Thank you for listening.
Peace.
And now we're back, and from that visual representation, you now know what it actually looks like your dopamine levels and how it actually works in like a basic terms. I guess in a basic terms. I would try to explain that to a 4-year-old. If you don't understand that, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it all goes back to that word dopamine. It's made in the brain, acts as a chemical messenger, and it communicates like the nerve cells between the brain and the body. So it's obviously like a huge deal. And people let their levels of dopamine control their lives. Like if I had a low level of dopamine, I'm gonna be tired, I'm gonna be unmotivated, I'll be sloppy, whatever. Whereas if I have a high level of it, I'm gonna be more energetic, ecstatic.
Motivated.
You want to be balanced with it. So you need to know your balance with it too. The more balanced you are with it, you'll be happier, you'll be more content, alert, focused, motivated. Same thing. And there's like these levels of dopamine, it connects with literal scientific diseases. Like if I had a low level of dopamine, people typically find that in like Parkinson's disease and all these other things where like your brain's deteriorating. So it's rough. It really is rough.
Your brain is rotting from too much stimulation.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Mm-hmm. That's literally Parkinson's disease. Like that's when the old motherfuckers get like it's a age condition. So it makes sense, but it's rough because you see that type of stuff being in it. So it's a big deal. It really is.
Yeah, and when it also comes to addictions too, it's not even just addictions. It also causes habits. When you do something constantly, like, for example, when I said video games, if I'm playing video games every day, even though it was boring, I still did it because it was a habit of mine. I couldn't live without that habit, and therefore it was a bad habit in my opinion. It wasn't doing anything for me. So also, like, addictions can also disguise themselves as habits. So don't be like, since I need my coffee in the morning, that's a habit. Oh, I drink my coffee in the morning. That's a habit. But it just depends how it is, and it can look like an addiction overall.
So my experience with video games, I was the same way. I was addicted to it. I didn't really find a reason why I was doing it. It was just like a habit. And it's like you're giving yourself excuses every day of why you should do it.
Yeah.
Have fun, I'm just talking with my friends, that kind of stuff. And there's a lot involved in playing video games. You're with your friends, you talk to them, you have fun, all that kind of stuff. So it's you constantly giving yourself excuses on why you should do a certain thing, even though it doesn't benefit you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just brought a great point, which is excuses. That's a lot of big reason on why people can't let it go is because they just make excuses in their head. And again, I will emphasize this in every episode. It's you versus you. It's you versus you. You have to really look into you, into yourself, into your soul, into whatever it is, and tell yourself, guess what? I'm making an excuse. I don't need video games. I'm just saying this because it's fun, or your excuse is never because it's fun. You always try to say, like, there's a reason why I'm playing video games. Like, I'm getting better eye coordination skills. Dude.
Press reflexes.
Stop, man. You're
it's
bum.
Not really a flex.
You're bum.
It's not really a
You're
flex.
bum.
You're a bum.
You're a bum. Face it. You're making excuses. You're a bum. Face the truth.
And a lot of people are going to sit behind the camera and say,
You're a
it's
bum.
not an excuse, but it's not them that's telling them that's the excuse, it's their brain. So don't even blame it. I'm going to say no, it's an excuse. But before we get into the next topic of what we're about to do, let's really explain like why we would even need to reset our brain. Why, like, what causes someone to be like, okay, I need to change?
I mean, just look at where we are right now with how social media plays a role in everyone's life right now. I mean, people literally wake up, first thing they do is scroll on TikTok, go on Instagram, open up Snapchat. That is absurd to me.
It's wild. I used to do that.
It's what you say, monkey brain. It's monkey brain activities.
It's monkey brain activities.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go with that.
And then there's all this, like, especially Americans, like all the shit that we eat, the processed food that's in grocery markets, the preservatives, all that nasty shit. Like it messes up. Even you try to convince me that milk is bad for me. Fuck you, man.
I might look crazy, but at the end of the day, there's a reason why I'm crazy.
Like I can't even trust these companies that are just trying to make money. I have no idea what the fuck they put in their food. I have no idea.
It's addicted. It's addicting for a reason, bro.
There could be carcinogens in that. I'm just fucking gulping that shit up.
You're gulping hormones, feminine hormones in your milk, buddy. Stop with that. That's not what the topic's about. But the first step into restarting and reprogramming your brain is understanding that you have an addiction and being mindful of what you're doing. So
Understand your whys.
What?
Yeah, I feel like
your whys.
I feel like everyone can understand they have the addiction. It's understanding like why you need to change.
Yeah.
Like why is this actually becoming an issue?
Yeah. So the past couple days, right? I've been in a slump trying to figure out, because I really recently I haven't been seeing my meaning and my purpose, and I was trying to wonder like, why don't I just do things? Why can't I just do things that I want to do even though they suck, blah blah blah. And I was trying to realize that like that's just how my brain's wired. I just do things for the sake of it and just for the pleasure of it and not just for a meaning. So when it comes to reprogramming your brain, a lot of it is discipline. You guys did a whole episode of motivation versus discipline, and you guys missed out on, I think, a couple things. Like discipline at one point, discipline and time is equal to freedom. But if you don't have discipline in your life, like just like I said, it can become addiction. Everything's easy. You can just do whatever you want, and it's not pleasurable. Life is not fulfilling if you have everything you want. So how are you gonna go on life living like you have everything you have already, and then try to be like, oh, I don't know what I want to do with my life, blah 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 blah. Well, buddy, you have everything in your life already. So why would you even like? No wonder you're sad. No wonder you're in bed. No wonder you wake up and you go on your phone for 2 hours. It's because your dopamine levels are so low because you've been doing these bad habits and you don't even realize it. You built a bad addiction to dopamine. And some ways to get rid of that is things like meditation, having a good diet, doing things that fucking suck, like David Goggins do, like exercise, of course, just the way you talk to yourself too.
Mindset.
Give yourself titles instead of like I am statements, like, oh, I am not addicted to these things. I don't need to depend on them. I am the way I am, and I don't need them. Like, talk to yourself nicely like that. And something is called like a monk mode protocol, where like you have a certain amount of restrictions to get a certain objective done in a certain amount of time. So that would mean, for example, in 6 months I want to make $50,000, right? And that is my goal, but I will have restrictions in order for that. So I cut out, for example, caffeine, have a strict diet, exercise every day, get 8 to 9 hours of sleep, and then just do nothing else that gives me pleasure.
To simplify what Mike said, you have two options. You have two realistic options. Either you keep doing what you're doing and it gets you nowhere, or you do the things that fucking suck, the things that are miserable, and you become better. And not just better, you become a man. You become a true woman. You become what you were born to do. And again, everyone has a different reason on why they think they were born and what their purpose is, but I think everyone wants to become the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
I think so. I really do.
So, like I explained in the video about the dopamine baselines and the waves it goes, doing things that suck raises your dopamine. So why, like, it raises your your standard level of dopamine. So in that case, like, what if you raise your dopamine levels so high that you don't need to depend on anything and life is just totally peaceful? For you young boys out
Just
there,
imagine.
for you, I can't. What the fuck? Alright.
All of us take a second.
I can't take him seriously.
I'm gonna start crying.
I was about to get so serious and you did that shit, bro.
I'm sorry.
Alright.
Back to serious.
Yeah. So for all you young boys out there, if you're having a hard time trying to find your meaning and your purpose in life, think about your addictions. Think about the things you do for the sake of pleasure. Don't do things for the sake of pleasure. Do things because they have meaning. That means, like, for example, like, why do you go to the gym? Why do you take hot showers? Why do you eat certain foods? Just question everything. Question everything you do. And try to take away things that just stimulate your brain, distract your brain from trying to find your meaning. That's all I got.
I mean, that should wrap us up. Does anyone have any final thoughts they want to just let the audience know?
I think the biggest reason also for me is of why addiction is bad is because the time. It takes a lot of time from your life. When you're addicted to something,
Yeah.
it takes a lot of time
You're
from
wasting your time.
Exactly. Things that you can invest on, you're investing into addictions. So playing video games, right? I mean, quarantine, I was the same way. But look back at that time, I was asking myself, why am I doing this? But my only answer was coming in my head was excuses. I was like, I can't go outside, can't go to the gym, because it's COVID, right? So I was like, I'm just gonna sit home and play video games. It was an excuse. And guess what? After like 2 months, I realized I could have worked out at home. I didn't have enough equipment to, like, in the gym, but I could still work on my body, the equipment that I had. So, you know what I mean? Always find a way to do things. So I feel like the biggest reason for addiction is to also, it's time. I mean, time is the biggest thing in our lives. We can't turn back and just switch the clock.
Definitely, the most valuable thing. And the longer you hold on to the addiction, the harder it is to step out of it after a while, because the addiction is strong. It gets stronger and stronger every day, and it's just harder to let go of it.
It is difficult, and I don't want to say this kind of stuff and think it's easy. It's not easy. It really isn't. I was trying to convince myself that quitting, having less coffees a day is easy, but then the time comes, I'm like, oh, dude, I want a cup of coffee like right now. So it's like it is difficult. I know it is, but you can change if you really wanted to. I want you guys 3 takeaways from this video, right? Discipline and determination is equal to freedom, inner peace, and meaning. Too much pleasure is equal to a lack of meaning. And the last thing,
Be yourself.
be yourself and never stray from the way.
The harder it is, the better the reward. Always think about that. There are a couple of things in my life that I look back at and I'm most proud of. And even though I never really suffered from a serious addiction, I bet if you can overcome it, you know that's something you'll be proud for the rest of the life. And even maybe you can help others through a podcast or whatever it is. Maybe being on this one. Who knows? But let's get to the quote of the day. And the quote is, your decision to kill your addiction will only become a reality if you believe and reinforce the fact that you have the capacity to do it. And again, it just goes back to don't make any excuses. Really, you have to believe in yourself. If you're going to half-ass it and you're going to say, well, I can get over the addiction, I just don't want to, you're not going to fucking get over the addiction. You have to fully believe, I am capable of this. I am a man or a woman, and I will fucking do this. I will conquer. I will conquer. I don't know.
Take control of your life.
Exactly.
Grab life
Let
by
me
the
answer that.
fucking
It's now or never.
Now or never.
It's simple as that.
Now or never.
Do it right now. That's what I always say. Do it right now.
Yeah,
Not
wait
tomorrow.
till
Not after 2 hours. Not after 1 hour. Not after 2 minutes. Right now. Right fucking now.
Yeah, because when you have something, no matter what it is, right? You are putting this kind of thought in your head that it's okay if something doesn't go the way it should, and you're not pushing yourself to the fullest. You're not putting yourself under the pressure of you really got to do this, because when you're saying, okay, if it doesn't work out, whatever. That means you're giving yourself another excuse to not do something the right way, the way it should be done.
And you brought a good thing is if you attempt to already have attempted to try and do this addiction, you failed. Don't think, oh, that's over. No, you gotta know, you just gotta go fucking harder. No addiction is not impossible to get away with.
It's part of the process. It just takes long, but it's gonna
you didn't
happen
fail.
if you try to.
You didn't fail.
You learned.
You learned. And with that, the shout
Bros
out.
think big.
Yeah, bros do think big. Zach Schwartz 4789. Love you, Zach.
We love you, Zach.
On YouTube, right? He said, post a full video on reels of you guys dancing at the end. And in case you weren't aware, in case
I don't
you're
know
a
what
snake.
you're talking about. You try to explain to them what he's talking about.
So what he's talking about is, we were just having a great time, having a great Russian dance. What was it? Welcome to America.
If you stayed on the video after he ended and you watched the whole thing,
Matter of fact,
you would see the dance.
Yeah.
You would
Go
see
back
the
and
dance.
watch it.
Watch the whole video through and then watch that.
Absolutely.
Exactly, guys. And even every episode.
Marketing.
There's always a little fun thing to the end. So just stay tuned, and also just let us know, Zach, and if anyone else watches to the end, if you guys want us to post that clip on Instagram and whatever, those little goofy clips. And with that,
If you're lucky.
if you're lucky, of course. Think big.
Grow big. Peace.
Have a good night.